Hey everyone, so I made it back after being just flung into the ceiling over here, so glad that didn't happen again. But yeah, I just wanted to check out the display here at the Expo. And there's actually 4 featured manufacturers with this display hall here. You can see we've got Consolidated Outland, Argo obviously, Kruger, and Greycat. But even with all of them being here, there's still not a ton of ships and vehicles in this display hall. So I guess let's get started with some of the Argo ships. Alright, so this here is the MPUV cargo. And these are basically meant for tending larger ships, mainly things like Idrises and Javelins, since they have special bays built in for these. But yeah, this is basically a pilot seat that's attached to a box that can hold some cargo. So yeah, this is the ship that won the ship showdown, and you can definitely see why. It's a nice little ship. Then over here we have the MPUV personnel. This is basically the same thing as the MPUV cargo, except this rear segment that would hold cargo now holds people. And you can see this actually holds 8 people in the rear here, which is way more than anything else in this size category. And you really have to go up to a pretty large ship to have more capacity than this. So yeah, this is useful as a shuttle, although I would like to see a slightly larger shuttle with a quantum drive added to the game, because yeah, like I said, the game is very lacking in terms of ships that can carry a lot of people. Okay, and then off to the left here we have what is probably Argo's most used ship at the moment. This is the Argo MOLE, and this is a medium-sized or medium-large-sized mining ship, and it offers decent cargo capacity and mining laser power upgrades over the Prospector. And also it's nicely positioned in terms of price to where if you get one out of game, it does save you a ton of time, but it's also not too unreasonable to try to earn one in game. And then here we have the most recent edition, the Argo RAFT. So this was priced a lot lower than I was expecting, but that's because its features are actually relatively basic. It holds 96 SU of cargo in these 3 32 SCU boxes that are at the rear here. In the future, these rails and holding devices here will function as a sort of crane, so you'll be able to unload and load this thing a lot faster than you would with another ship. And this should have some synergy with things like the Hull series, because you'll be able to take boxes directly from those, load them up onto here, and fly them somewhere else if you need to. But yeah, as you can even just visually see, it's a whole lot of ship for not a lot of cargo, and it definitely chews through hydrogen at the moment, so we'll have to see when that cargo refactor comes online how worth it that fast loading and unloading feature is going to be as a trade-off for really not having that much capacity. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting ship, and I think everyone really likes the interior and crew space. It's one of the most nicely done one of those. And if you just want a big ship for a relatively low price, then this one does give you a lot for your money. Okay, off to the right over here, we have all of Consolidated Outland ships that are currently in game. So this here is the Mustang Gamma. This is the racing variant of the Mustang. You can see it's got sort of racing numbers up there. And all of the Mustangs fly pretty well, but this one flies particularly well, and it is quite fast. Here is the Mustang Beta, and this one actually has an interior space that's behind the pilot seat. So yeah, this makes it actually somewhat of a competitor to something like an Avenger Titan or a 300i, but it seems to be an often overlooked ship, just because the Mustang is known for being more of a starter ship than anything. But yeah, another thing that all the Mustangs have is this nice wide open canopy. They've got a really good cockpit view and not much to obstruct you. In the middle here is a ship that was unveiled at the Expo last year. This is the Nomad, and it's a bit of a upgraded sort of starter ship. So it's still designed for one person. It still can do a bit of combat and a bit of cargo, but you can actually use this external, completely exposed cargo bay for hauling vehicles as well. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting ship. I'm not the biggest fan of the hover landing gear. It can be inconvenient to deal with sometimes, but it's a whole lot of capability in a pretty small package. Okay, and then here is the Mustang Alpha, and this is a really fun little starter ship. It still does have cargo space at the rear with this box, but it's a pretty decent fighter actually, just because it's fast and maneuverable. And I'd say it's generally a lot more fun to fly than an Aurora, but unfortunately at the moment you can't really do box missions or stuff like that with these, just because that cargo container in the rear doesn't allow you to place objects inside of it. So unfortunately the Aurora is usually the better option of the starter ships for the moment. And then this here is the Mustang Delta. which is the combat focused variant, has a slightly bigger nose turret, I believe, and it also has these special dumbfire missile pods, which I don't think you find on anything besides the Vanguard turrets that come with those as well. And I've heard that this variant is surprisingly combat capable from a reliable source, so I'd go ahead and check it out if you haven't. Alright, now let's head downstairs to check out those vehicles and a couple holoviewer models. Alright, so here we have the ROC display. They usually do not float, but I guess they do here. And this one here is the ROC DS. This is the more recent edition, and it's a little bit silly because it's supposed to have the benefit of this enclosed cab here and increased capacity, which will let you go out for longer trips and collect more ore without returning and depositing it somewhere. But all of that's kind of thrown off because you have to have a mining laser operator here, and they're completely exposed to the elements and to whatever sort of rock shards that the laser's chipping off. So yeah, I think this is a little bit silly of a vehicle and unfortunate because it could have been made into something pretty useful, but I guess it'll probably be eventually useful for cave mining once that's possible. Then here is just the standard ROC. You can't really go wrong with this. It's always been a pretty solid moneymaker since it was introduced, and it can be a little bit frustrating to work with just because of the ways that ships and vehicles interact, especially when you have to load and unload them many times. But as long as you can deal with that, you can make a pretty good amount of credits driving one of these around. And then last but not least, we have Greycat's PTV. These aren't all that useful at the moment, unfortunately, but in the future, when these are deployed in areas that need them, they'll probably save you a good bit of walking. Then over here we have Kruger's only 2 ships. These actually became a lot more oftenly used because somewhat recently the Constellation's snub functionality started working, and these are the ships that are mounted to the underside of those Constellations that have them. So this here is the Merlin. It has 2 size 1s on the wings and this special Gatling that you can see that's mounted in the center of it. And this is what you have equipped on the Andromeda and the Aquila. And then here is the Archimedes, which is kind of slightly upgraded in every way. I think it even flies and handles a little bit better, and it has dual wing mounted weapons and no center mounted weapon. But yeah, these are fun little ships and surprisingly capable, but they don't have a quantum drive, so they really rely on that Constellation or another ship if you happen to put it in the hangar of something. It will probably fit though. Now taking a look at those holoviewer models, the first one we have here is the SRV. This is Argo's tugboat basically. It's got a large tractor beam on the rear, and this will probably be used as a tow truck, maybe to help moving cargo around, and oftentimes to guide larger ships. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see what that tractor beam will be useful for once we have it in game, but I'm sure it'll be a pretty valuable ship to have around. And then here we have a very cool ship. This is the Consolidated Outland Pioneer, and this is designed for base building. It can basically lay down the outposts that we currently see on all the moons across Star Citizen, and it brings along the building materials to construct them and also the facilities to construct them, and even has defenses to defend you a little bit while you're putting them down. So unfortunately this ship is probably still a long ways away just because it involves base building mechanics. And it's also a very large ship, but it'll definitely be very cool once it arrives. Alright, so that's it for Argo, Consolidated Outland, Greycat, and Kruger's Day at the Expo. As for the sale, really the only major consideration here is the raft because it's new. Nothing else has really changed with the other manufacturers' offerings. But yeah, I guess if you want a large ship with a pretty well thought out interior, or you just want to work unloading and loading whole series ships in the future, this is the perfect ship to do that. And it's not a terrible value actually, it just doesn't carry a ton of cargo for its size. Alright, so now I want to thank my members, Starjump Starlet and GreatWatch93. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel, and if you all want to help me out, you can do that by hitting the like or subscribe button, or if you really want to help the channel, you can do that by becoming a member with the join button. I really appreciate all of you guys' support. Thanks for watching.